Outdoors. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining today. This is a good time for us to for all of you to connect, I think, because you're all concerned about climate change within sustainability and climate change education in particular. But so the idea with these sessions is to share best practices in terms of how you've been able to leverage the Climate Fresk workshop in your institutions. And we're lucky that we have 2 points of view, the educator point of view, and then the sustainability um, professional point of view within the university. So today we wanted to hear from Laura. So I'm Caroline Zotier, representative for Climate Frisk in Canada. Today we're here to listen to Laura Tozer's recent project, leveraging Climate Fresk, to see if it can, be a good sharing experience, and maybe you can ask questions to Laura and, see what she has in mind for the future or not. I'm curious to find out more. And the picture behind me is from her project, actually, where she was kind enough to send me a few pictures. So it's the floor is yours, Laura.
Great, thanks so much. So I can start by kind of outlining a little bit of what I did and some early reflections on it. I have an undergraduate and a graduate course this semester, both climate change focused, and I use the Climate Fresk in both. In my undergraduate class, I used it. My undergraduate class is called Addressing the Climate Crisis. It's 101 on climate change, the human and solutions side. So we do I want to have enough climate science in it to offer some literacy, but really the focus is on understanding the social, political, cultural dynamics of the problem and the solutions. And so Climate Fresk worked really well for me for that climate science literacy application. I did it the second week. We did it in class. I had to smush it into 2 hours in order to fit into a university timeline. And I could talk more about that, but I think it went well. I think it went fine. Yeah. And I didn't get my, I did have my TA attend a Climate Fresk as part of her paid TA hours, like the research and training hours, but I didn't have quite enough to get her all the way through to be a certified facilitator. So I had community facilitators who were invited into the classroom. They were very enthusiastic. There were lots of people looking for opportunities to offer Climate Fresk. And we ran just a few tables all in my actual classroom, moved stuff around so that we could do it in the actual classroom. And most of the time was taken up with the first part, with the actually making the fresk. We had to do quite an abridged solutions part in particular. But actually, I think it worked fine, and we spend multiple weeks on solutions after that. So it's kind of just enough of a brainstorm that everybody leaves the room feeling that we've got this a little bit, and then we really unpack solutions as a core learning of the course. But I used it a lot more in my graduate class. It was scaffolded more in my graduate class. I made an assignment on climate science communication, and so I had my graduate students who had got assignment credit for attending a fresk that I ran, and then for attending a facilitator training that I got Carolyn to offer for the students, and then writing a reflection. So the assignment was that they had to participate in a fresk, be certified to be a Climate Fresk facilitator. The graduate students were very excited about it because it's an accreditation that they write down on climate science communication. But then I made an extra credit to actually facilitate a Climate Fresk at a high school. That it's the second year I've worked with this high school trying to do climate education for 9 to 12 students. And so we did kind of at the last week of the semester, we spent one afternoon at the high school. They did the recruitment of the students who were able to sign up for a Climate Hope conference, is what we called it. And then we ran it in the high school. I had a handful of my graduate students who signed up to do that for extra credit. And then I also brought in community facilitators for that one too. And I did that mainly because I was worried that I wouldn't have enough students. Originally, I did it mainly because I was worried wouldn't have enough students to be able to run enough tables for the high school students who would sign up. But actually, the way it turned out is that I ended up pairing them together, the experienced facilitators and the students, because I asked when we got there, we ended up with more facilitators than we needed, which was a good problem to have because I asked my students when we got there, who's feeling nervous and would like to work with someone more experienced, and several people shot their hand up immediately. So I think that model worked well, but there are some things things to think about for the design for next year. Like, for example, what kind of credit the community facilitators get when they enter it into this, like they really want to be a sole facilitator. Like they get different kinds of credit for that than if they co-facilitate or if you're an observer in terms of working your way through the Climate Fresk system. So it's something to think about for next year. And I think it went really well. I did a quiz after the Climate Fresk in the undergrad class and was happy with what they learned. They did a reflection in my graduate course that I've gone through some of them, and I did get a couple of direct feedbacks too about how much they enjoyed learning about climate science communication and in particular getting to apply it with the high school students. Yeah, so probably better to do this kind of question answer discussion kind of way, but that's the way that I used it. Maybe one last thing is I had to get some funding from my department to get them to pay for the facilitator training, which my department did as part of it, like a teaching expense.
Yes. Thank you. I'll let everyone else ask any questions. I have time for it.
Sounds great.
Oh, actually, one other thing was the Fresk that I offered that I made my graduate students go to by making it an assignment. I also partnered with the sustainability office and we made it open to the campus. So it was a sustainability event. It was mostly my students getting credit who actually came, but we doubled up so that if it was both kinds of thing.
Nice.
Laura, have you thought about connecting the grad and the undergrad versions, that maybe the grad students come and help you with the undergrad Fresk? Or does it, I mean, probably the timing of the two courses doesn't work.
Yeah, it's the timing.
Yeah.
Because I really loved the Fresk right at the beginning of the undergrad class. My students who take my second year class are 3/4 of them, maybe more, 80%, pretty brand new to climate.
Yeah.
And I like it early in the course.
Yeah.
Then in order to get them all the way through the go to a Fresk, go to a facilitator training, that takes a bit of time for the graduate students.
Yeah, true.
And any other questions?
How many people did you say?
My undergraduate class, I'm trying to remember how many actually turned up. I think it was about, what did we run? We ran 3 tables of 7 or 8 people. And my graduate, and then the high school, we had something like 62 or 65 or something high school students who participated.
That's a lot. You didn't get a whole big group picture? That would have been neat.
We didn't line them all up or anything, no.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I got an overhead shot of all the tables in action at the
Very
same
cool.
time. Half the tables in action. They were in 2 rooms. Half the tables in action.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's always nice to show these big groups.
The key for the high school one, if anyone wants to do that, is that it was the librarian who was my partner with that. And that was fantastic because she shopped it around to all the science teachers so that I wasn't working with just one class. It was, and then we could use the library space as kind of the conference space.
Yeah, that's a big library because to fit in that many students.
A huge school.
It's a nice space, yeah. That's very interesting to hear that you connected with the librarian. So does this mean that all these students came during what were usually science classes? Do you know how that worked out? Or was it outside of their school day? In
It
addition,
was during their school day. It was afternoon.
Yeah.
We had a little bit of an issue where it needs to be 2 periods.
Yeah.
So a small number of them signed up and only came for one of the periods because they signed up for their science class and then didn't want to miss, didn't feel they could miss whatever
Yeah.
the other class
right?
was. But many of them stayed the whole time. They kind of committed to it like an afternoon long conference
Okay.
and did whatever they needed to do to
Yeah.
not go to the other class. And the librarian took care of she took everyone's name as they came in, like the attendance and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Someone else, all that stuff.
And
Yes, we did run into a little bit of trouble where there's a science teacher who's very committed to this, who instructed both of his classes to sign up, his grade 9s, his grade 11s, and all the grade 9s came for the whole afternoon, but the grade 11s only came for the one period that he had them for science because they didn't want to miss
yeah,
that.
yeah. Yeah, getting that 2 hour commitment is even just 2 hours is complicated during school hours. Yeah, sure.
But the other thing though is that it ended early. It was fine to do in that amount of time in the afternoon.
Okay. You know, as educators, if you had to, like, how did you adapt? So basically, if you did it in 2 hours, did you, as you were saying before, did you really keep all the cards and really do the card portion entirely and choose to reduce the other two parts, you know, the emotions and the actions? Or do you see adaptation differently? For example, using less cards? Any feedback on that to make it fit in that 2 hour window?
In the undergraduate class, we used all the cards and we spent most of the time on the cards, but we did like a 10-minute version of emotions, 10-minute-ish version of solutions.
Yeah.
Is the following week was emotions, and then the following 2 weeks after that were solution,
Okay.
the design of my course. So I might adapt it differently if it was dropped into a not climate course. Like if this was all the climate content, I probably would adapt it differently for an undergrad. And the high school students, we did the simplified adult version. So we just took out the 3 cards from that version.
Okay.
And that seemed like it went fine. We many of the tables probably similarly spent 10 minutes on the emotions and 15, 20 on the solutions. It actually went quite fast. They didn't have a lot to say about like we kind of did a whole discussion about solutions pretty fast. There's an activity that I used for that I liked, and it went pretty fast. And then they needed more input to be able to, like, they didn't know any other solutions to bring up.
Yeah.
Laura,
Well,
what's your solutions activity? Do you want to quickly walk us through that?
Sure, here,
Yeah.
I'll show you an output from it because it's on my wall.
Oh, nice.
So I do a little line activity here where one axis is exciting and one axis is doable. And I do 2 of them. And it's a sticky note activity. And I do 2 of them because one chart is individual solutions and one chart is collective solutions. So it doesn't have to be just what you as an individual would do, but it's like, what can one do? Any individual do, so that they can say things like buy an electric car without having to think they can do it. And then the collective ones are what should society do, or corporations, or us in general, anyone collective community do. And I like that because they don't get bogged down in one or the other. They don't just they just keep doing the like lifestyle choice climate solutions. They think big. Like this is the collective one, and they've got seed library, retrofit buildings, grid upgrade, sustainable agriculture, public transit, passive design, energy regulations, carbon tax tariffs, dismantling capitalism. Like they've got everything on there, and they have to do something about the graph activity makes them have to talk to each other about how, like, why is it exciting or why is it not doable, and having to place it on there.
Nice. Yeah, I like it. That just prompts them to actually talk about them rather than write them and stick them down. Cool.
Yeah. That's usually how we recommend, although I like the exciting and doable aspect. Any Steve, since you were running the workshop to a whole bunch of undergrad students, I think, during this semester. Any feedback, any learnings, and be really honest. I'm just here to get honest, because so just to come back to what you were saying about the simplified version for high school, like grades 9 to 12. Even our facility. So you were with Dorothy, Laura, who is a very how do you say? She is how do you say? She really wants to abide by Climate Fresk rules. So whereas our facilitators in Ottawa, who have been going into schools, have really started adapting the Climate Fresk already, and they've encountered this 2-hour issue. And so what they've actually done is reduce the number of cards more than -3 cards. So they're down to, depending on the facilitator, depending on whether it's a science class or just a French class or an English class, because they do it in all sorts of classes. They're down to 31 to 35 cards instead of the 42 cards. And they are apparently, and it's true that for high school, they make it last usually 2.5 hours. So it's true that they do need that extra half hour to really have some more time for emotions and a bit more time for action, because in the case of schools, they're not going to be covering solutions or emotions after that. So they have to really leave some time for that in that case. But but any other feedback on Steve, any other just impressions, how you see this going further, and I would love to hear from you, especially you too, about actions. Like, have you ever given your courses, I think, focus a lot on actions. Are you ever tempted to have cards that talk about actions? Like, is that something that has come to mind or no?
My TAs brainstormed a little after we did the Fresk, and they thought it would be really cool to have a deck of cards for climate solutions. We even speculate. I don't know if we'll do it, but we speculated, hey, this would be a cool project to do over the summer. Yeah, I think for me, and I think Laura's touched on the many of the points that are the same for us. The management of time and how you fit it into the schedule for existing classes is I think the biggest challenge. Yeah. But I do like the idea that there can be a lot of adaptation of the activity depending on the kind of class and the kind of students that you're working with. So, for example, for me in our undergrad course, and it's very much like Laura's undergrad course, we focused on just the cards. We used the full set, but we focused on just the card activity itself. Yeah. We skipped the emotion and the solutions part completely when we were doing it in their tutorials, because the next few modules in the course dug into those in so much more detail. So I knew that was coming. And I knew we were going to have the space to do it a lot more deeply than kind of, okay, they were just exhausted them doing the card layout. Now we're also going to dive into these pieces. The other thing that we did, took my TAs through this, we realized the time was our precious resource. we skipped all the prelude at the beginning of the activity. You know, typically with your facilitators, there's an explanation at the beginning about what the activity is, where it came from, and all of that. I said, let's just not do any of that. Let's just give them the first set of cards and explain what they're doing. So in other words, they walk in, there's a sheet of paper there, we give them the first set of cards straight away and say, here's your goal.
Yeah.
And I think that worked really well.
Yeah.
What
And-
else?
And in your case, did you, I recall, I seem to recall that you did it, even the set of cards, did you do it over a couple of sessions or?
Yeah. Oh, that was hilarious. We did it
Oh.
over 3 weeks.
Oh,
So we had I only had these 1 hour tutorial slots on my
Yeah.
class, which was
Yeah.
wasn't how I originally planned it. It was a screw up in the timetabling, and that's what I was dealt with. So
Yeah.
we went with it. What we ended up doing is an hour long tutorial is really 45 minutes max. You know, classes here start at 10 after. There's always a few students trickling in, even quarter past, 20 past. And there's always a few students who want to leave early. So you get at best 45 minutes of useful activity time.
right.
So the first week we only did set 1 and set 2.
Yeah. Okay.
We got them all to take photos of the layout.
Yeah.
Take that away with them, and then they come back in the following week, and their first challenge is we give them the cards again and say, lay it out exactly how you had it at the end of last week. And we
Right.
got them to do it.
Yeah.
And of course, the interesting part is we had different students show up different weeks, because you know how it is with students. So we've got a handful of students showing up the second week who weren't there the first week.
Yeah.
So I said, this is great, right? I distributed the new students across the different groups. So each group only had 1 or 2 newcomers, because
Yeah.
we had 3 groups in each tutorial group. And I said, right, your goal is not just to lay out your cards, but to explain to the people who weren't here last week what you did.
Oh, nice.
So there's at least a 5-minute warm up where the new students are getting an explanation from the ones that were there of what they did and how they ended up with the layout that they had. And then we introduced the next 2 sets of cards.
Yeah.
And then we did the same again, end of that second week, take a photo of what you've laid out, go away. And then the third week we come back in. At this point, we give them all the pens and everything to start decorating. So again, lay it out as you had it the previous week. Now you can add your lines, you can add your annotations, you can start to decorate it, and then we give them the last how many more sets are left? 2. Well, we split the last set up into the
Yeah.
we stage that a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you're supposed to do. Yeah.
A couple of my TAs, so most of this was done by my TAs. I dropped into them, but I'd got them running simultaneously in the same hour in different rooms, so I wasn't able to be there for all of them, because my TAs had all gone through the facilitator training.
Yeah.
But it's the first time they're facilitating.
Yeah.
And I noticed I don't know if you've seen this across your freshly trained facilitators, huge range of styles for how they try and do it. I've got one of my TAs was trying to do way too much explanation and tried to teach. I said, no, just let them read the cards, let them figure it out. Don't guide them through the activity.
Yeah.
What else?
Definitely. Yeah, that's why we say with the Climate Fresk, you get this 3-hour citizen training, the citizen education, but then you really need practice to really be comfortable. And, I would say for me, at least 10 to really be comfortable, and also to have the right attitude where you resist during that teaching and you're letting them put it together, but you're still able to explain some things that can be a bit complex, or to get them or to ask the right questions to get them to, for example, place the carbon sink card under the CO2 emissions without doing it for them. So without touching their work, their collective work, you're able to say the right things or ask the questions so that only they touch the cards and you're not touching the cards. And that takes a little bit of practice. It's not natural.
Yeah, I like that rule. That's a good one.
Yeah. We say, I remember the person who taught me, facilitation said, it's a work of art. So you never touch a work of somebody else's work of art. Even though we know it's a
I
very,
had I
yeah.
had one group. It was hilarious. I was only saw this for a few minutes because of one of the groups that I dropped in on. They looked at the cards and they decided they didn't like the cards, so they put all the cards to one side and they made their own. They made their own cards.
Really?
I think what they were doing was we just thought, let's see where this goes. My
Yeah,
TA was, do I stop this? Do I put it? I said, no. You know what? Let them run with it. They'd
yeah.
basically got the big sheet of paper and they were drawing their own versions of each card on the paper,
Wow.
rather than
I
laying the
wish
cards out.
send me a picture of that. That's neat.
Yeah, I've got a copy of what they did somewhere.
What were they changing? Was the information the same? Was it just a visual?
I think they felt the cards were too big, and they wanted each, like they were drawing rectangles around them, but they made each rectangle a lot smaller so that they could have more space for the arrows between them.
Oh,
Um, but I think also they were worried about the cards moving around. They were drawing on all the arrows as they were going, and they didn't want the card, once they'd put a card down, they didn't want it to move. So by drawing it on the paper, then it doesn't move. And then, of course, they realize as we give them more and more sets, this doesn't.
yeah,
But it's still an interesting learning activity,
it is. Yeah.
even though they've chosen to do that. It was quite hilarious the way that they went. It was absolutely insistent. This is the way we're going to do it. So fine. Let's see what they end up doing.
Yeah, I guess the only question after that, and it's interesting to see that you had a quiz, Laura, is what do they actually retain? Because it is, of course, a very engaging activity to be sort of, I call it the climate puzzle, to be putting this puzzle together. But I assume that you want them to get, some sort of learning out of it, which is not just the collective experience, which is also, retaining some of the science. So yeah, the only question is, how do they, is it effective in them learning about the basic scientific premise, the basic elements after that?
Yeah. Laura,
Yeah,
at some point over the summer, you and I should compare our quizzes. That would be fun.
we should. Yeah, that'd be great. We should compare our assignments in general.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was in the last meeting or something. We talked about how you were doing a group project, a hope-oriented group project. I
Yeah.
did something similar. I'd love to chat with you about those projects. They made some podcasts and videos. Very cool.
Very cool.
But I'll answer that point. But also I had a range of experience of facilitators in one room. One thing I noted was how much that the new facilitators went much faster. They
Yeah,
had less. They wanted to say. The experienced facilitators have a lot of specific things they want to make sure comes out related to
Yeah.
all sorts of
yeah,
parts.
yeah,
And the new ones are kind of they're like trying to make sure they're keeping everything on track. And they don't
Yeah.
have a lot they want to make sure happens beyond
yes,
there's no mistakes in it, or like there's
Yeah.
you're not misrepresenting anything. So the working with different levels of experience was interesting for that, so that they could see somebody else doing it, laying it out. But your question was, what did they learn? Oh, I was really happy with how they learned, how I wanted them to have it stuck in their mind with the human activities at the top, because that is a thing that a climate science learning that somehow gets lost when you get into all the
Yeah.
details of the dynamics. And I think
Yeah.
that worked. And the 4 or 5 cards that are the what human activities do
Yeah.
underneath that. So I asked them questions about that, and I was happy that seemed to be retained. And a couple of them made comments about that, about how, oh, it's so clear what causes it. So I wanted the what causes it to be very crystal clear in their mind, and to have it flow through to the burning fossil fuels card in
Yeah.
particular.
Yeah.
And then I also asked them about one of the quiz questions, like what are the 3 most concerning impacts on humans or ecosystems to you, and why? And they had lots of good examples at the other end. To me, I don't care that much that they caught the whole acidification of the ocean. Like I'd like them to have that in there, but I don't care if they retain
Yeah.
that part of it, or like, I hope that some of them got where the energy is going.
Yeah, yeah,
But I don't, I'm okay if they didn't get that. I want them to get the
yeah,
cause and consequence
yeah.
connection. And I think it does really well on that. That
Okay,
and complexity. Like, I want them to understand the fact that it's hard to wrap your head around all in one go.
Yeah.
But that was for the undergrads. My graduate students are in a climate impacts master's program.
Yeah.
So they knew it all. But the
Yeah.
interesting thing was they reflected very actively while they were doing it about trying, because they knew they were going to have to facilitate it. So they used it as how do I explain this without in an accessible way, like in a
Mhm.
way kind of like the card does, like a straightforward way.
Mhm.
So I thought that was really interesting, where it wasn't new, a lot of it wasn't new, but they
Right.
used it for the communication aspects.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very interesting. I like that.
Yeah, I agree with all of that about, especially with the undergrads, about what you want them to retain. I don't, same as you, Laura, I don't care if they come away from the Fresk with any detailed understanding of any of the specific cards and their interactions. It's the big picture. It's the way everything interconnects. That's really the value of the exercise. And I had many students at the end of term comment on that activity was where it all came together for them. So many of them were saying, we've learned bits of this in high school, but the Fresk is really what showed them the big picture. And that, I think, is really hard to do through other means. So I think if that's the one thing they get from the Fresk activity, I'm delighted, because then in the rest of the course, we can dive into specific topics. But it's
Yeah.
that, oh my God, everything is interconnected, and it's complex, as you said, Laura. And that just that gestalt sense of, okay, yeah, this is how it all hangs together.
Yeah, just picture all those arrows going everywhere in your mind. I
Yeah.
want. Can I jump back to the solutions cards thing? Because another thing I did, unrelated to the Fresk, in my graduate program, this graduate class this year, is I played this board game called
Yeah.
Daybreak.
Ooh, I don't know this one.
Yeah, look this one up, Steve. It's very cool, and they have an educator discount for it. It's same creator as Pandemic, so it's one of those super complex modern board games, and it's a collaborative game. Your 4 world powers. You have to solve climate change together. But my real point is that it has this massive deck of climate solutions, and many of them are too complicated to throw on the table in a Fresk. But you could go through it and lift some out, a smaller set of them, and use them in this. I haven't done this, so I don't know how it would work.
Right.
And they're very wide ranging. So they've got wilderness protection, heat pumps, high speed rail, degrowth movement. But this one's green quantitative easing. I wouldn't put that one on the table, but some of the ones that are easier for them to wrap their heads around. And they're collective ones. They're not the individual ones.
Yeah. And in your classes, do you have a Canadian focus on the solutions aspect? Like, do you put it in a Canadian context, or is it general?
I don't explicitly.
Okay.
They are thinking of things they could solve here.
Yeah.
I think just thinking back on some of their solutions.
Okay.
You could do, there would be some, we have students from everywhere in our classroom, so you could do some really interesting, what about back home conversations, if you wanted to, though. And
Right. Definitely. Yeah. Well, that's nice. Yeah. I'd love to, I have to see about this Daybreak. Is that,
Daybreak.
And
I just looked it up on Board Game Geek. It gets a high rating.
Oh yeah, it's geeky. And I did it too, only in my graduate class. I did it as the last class, so I did it as a climate policy making simulation, is the way I framed it.
Yeah.
And they just got the hang of it and then played for 10 minutes where they felt like they knew what they were doing, and then the class ended.
Yeah.
So so it's one of these a bit complex games to get. Yeah, it's not really intuitive. Is that what?
It's made for board game geeks. Yeah. The thing I think I like about it is that it is complex, and 3 hours would be great to have for people who are brand new to it. I
Yeah.
think it'd be great. It actually goes the rounds go quite quickly once you get going. I have some ideas for how to
Okay.
do it faster. But the
Okay.
thing I like about it is that it's like the Climate Fresk, where it's just as complicated on the climate solutions as Climate Fresk is on the
That's
cause and
nice.
consequence. And often you're having quite a shallow solutions conversation. Like you brainstorm, 15, like we got food, we got energy, and we're done. And this is like a really complex
Okay.
take on how we solve it side of things. So I really like that about it.
Okay, great.
I'd have to get that.
Yeah.
Ah, it's
Play
out of
it.
stock at
Yeah.
401 Games. I'm going to try and shop around for it.
I ordered it directly from Daybreak and because they gave it to me.
Oh, they give you an education discount. Oh, perfect. I'll do that then. I was looking for a Canadian supplier, but
No, I mean I had to pay pretty expensive shipping, but I bought 6 with an educator discount, so it was
oh, cool.
very affordable.
Well, this is very interesting, very helpful. I guess Nicole or Sonia, do you have any remarks or questions? Because you're in a slightly different context, like yeah, where you want to, I think, offer it more to the community, to the and you were saying, Nicole, in association with your climate talk, I forget the name, but
Yeah, so we did a session in collaboration with, we have a wellness impact lab out of our Dalalay Institute. Harvey Skinner and Susan Harris run climate cafes
yeah,
all around, climate anxiety. So I did climate cafes with them, and then they did the Fresk with us with all of their team and our work study students. And many of them were actually really interested in being facilitators. And we're talking about how can we develop more synergy between the two groups to offer more in the future. And I think, what's been limited at York is right now it's only me who's a trainer. So figuring out how do we build that capacity where we could offer more.
yeah,
I've also been talking to our Faculty of Environmental and Urban Change and seeing what we can do there. So similar to Laura and Steve, are there opportunities to integrate this within courses?
yeah.
And even within our faculty's team as well. They just recently did the Climate Cafe as a team within the staff of the Faculty of Environmental and Urban Change. So thinking about now running a session perhaps over the summer or something for some of the staff and getting more people engaged in training and creating those domino effects where we can integrate it in courses. I've noted as well, perhaps orientation activities. We're going to run an open one in May, a little delayed Earth Month activity as well, just to engage folks.
Yeah, good. And are you, if you don't have the full 3 hours, now you know that you can go and fit it into 2.
Yeah, I did 2.5, but
Yeah.
and in fact, how can we squeeze that front end a little bit more? Certainly the speaking points around Climate Fresk and maintaining that the proper, information that we have to give at the front end, but how can we tighten that?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
think about, because I think 3 hours is really tough. It's a lot of time commitments.
Yeah.
So thinking about, can we squeeze it a little bit into the 2? And it sounds like it's been done in other instances. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's different approaches. I've heard also, yeah, it's true that the introduction is really usually best suited to a citizen context or, for a nonprofit organization. But it's true that when you're doing it in a university, in a college, maybe you don't need to. I do like to get people to understand what the IPCC is,
Yeah,
because
yes.
I find that even with students, it's not totally always clear, that the IPCC is this body of volunteers from almost all countries under the UN.
Yeah.
People still say it's scientists looking at the climate change, and I say no, it's government officials, scientists, So it's really agreed upon, globally agreed upon science, right? So I do like to stress that.
Yeah.
As the source of information in the cards, because that way we avoid all the discussions after on, well, is this valid or not? So that's the only point that I would not leave out if possible. But it can be done, differently a number of ways, and the other option I've seen done is to have food during the action, the discussion, to have food and have people sit around a table and maybe be eating, given that it is relatively informal today. I mean, there's, that is the strength, and also maybe the limitation of the Climate Fresk is that the actions portion is so open, is that you could just, have an hour and a half or 2 hours of actually science, and an hour and a half even, or even an hour. If you take out almost 10 cards, you can cut it down to an hour for the science. If you just want to raise awareness, you're not in an educational search per se, you just want to raise awareness.
Yeah.
And then have 20 minutes dedicated to emotions, and then just have food. So you might fit it into 2 hours with some food in the last portion. So that could be a draw. And it could also make it a bit more less formal, a bit more of a sharing experience that way, and a bit more of a community experience, not so much an educational experience, just the way you would do it in a classroom setting.
Right.
So I would.
Points. Yeah.
Carolyn, can I
Success.
say something about reducing the cards? I'd have been happy to reduce the cards, but because it was brand new facilitators, I didn't have, they hadn't seen that before, and they didn't have instructions about that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
To be like a package that they can do.
No,
That's the only reason we did a big set, is because I thought otherwise
of
they'll feel
course.
like they're more adrift about what to do.
Of course, so they do, I did tell them in the training about our team version, which is 31 to 35 cards that our facilitators in Ottawa put together. They have not given, we're all volunteers here. I have asked them, can you create a PDF of just that version, just so that it's easier? All we have today is an Excel spreadsheet with Excel, I'm dating myself, is a spreadsheet with cards you take from the junior set and cards you take from the adult to create that 31 to 35 card version. That's all we have today. So I don't have a but that's why I said, do you want?
Am I the only one where sound cut out?
Audio?
Sorry?
Caroline?
Can anybody hear?
I heard fine.
Oh,
Is it just me?
Okay.
Is my internet having a problem, or?
I don't know.
okay.
I couldn't hear
Oh,
them. Yeah.
Anyway,
I think the thing, Carolyn, is they were clutching that little solutions card, the new people. So they need that.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. So we could just have a little solutions card with the 31. Okay, yeah, that's a
that would help.
point. Very good point. Thank you. Yeah. Good idea. That should not be too complicated, because we can do it on the mural, or we could just, take the visuals of the cards and create that. Okay.
I
great.
didn't give my facilitators that card. I thought, you know what? I'm not going to give them the anyway.
I was one clenching it.
You're tough on your facilitators. Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, I was using, the solution quite extensively for the first at least 10 workshops, because it is challenging to make sure.
It is. You're right. There's a lot for somebody new to the activity, and perhaps new to some of the science as well.
Yeah.
It's having that map is crucial. I don't think I ever looked at it once in all the workshops that I facilitated.
Really? Yeah, because this, of course, by heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you do have to pair it with the like once there's the right answer in their hand, I think you have to, they're tempted to like make sure all the cards
Yes.
are like that.
It-
So you do have to pair it with instructions about
It says, yes, that
matter.
this is not,
whatever, and like
yeah.
make them don't touch the cards, I think is a good advice. So I think adding that in addition to letting them hold the solution.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it does tempt them to like make sure
So
that
solve it for them.
solve it
Yeah.
for the right answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to.
One of the activities that I love when we're doing it, especially when we've got multiple groups in the same room, is when they walk around and compare each other's at different stages.
Yeah.
It's a really rich activity when they've got quite different ways of laying out the cards, and they do an explanation of here's why we laid it out the way we did.
Yeah.
We did a tour at the end, like with the
Yeah.
titles. And they explained their title, like a visit to each other's table.
Yeah. Yeah, did you find the titles interesting? Did you see the variety of titles that people use?
And that was a moment where they, not all of them, but some of the groups really came together and got it released them a little bit from the puzzle and let them just talk to each other, and that was nice too.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I really enjoy discussing the titles, and I think that's really important to make it more of a personal and a group effort, and not so much a science exercise. So that's good. I guess I'm not sure if we have anything else and any more questions.
I was just going to ask and put Sonia on the spot. Being a student and having gone through it, do you have any like thoughts or feedback on how, from a student's perspective? Putting you on the spot.
Okay. Did the session with everyone. It was pretty nice. Like it was not what I expected in terms of learning so much about the science aspect as well, because we definitely do know a lot about the social science aspect and what it does to our communities and stuff, but not really like, actual science behind it, which I think it was a good, level of introduction, but understanding. In terms of the activity, I liked how it was staggered into stages, so it didn't make it, too hard for us to complete. And it was a lot of communication and discussing and generating new ideas about what climate change is and how it's affecting our communities and stuff. So I like that aspect for sure. And we did have food in our session, thanks Nicole. So that definitely made it fun. So yeah. Overall, it was pretty good. I learned a lot, and I think everyone was pretty excited, to have this new knowledge and stuff. And that's why I do want to try and become a facilitator so that, we can see the other side of doing these sessions. Yeah.
And like,
Great.
and I'm thinking about the interdisciplinary aspects, Sonia's coming from a political science background where may not having that science background
Yeah.
knowledge. So just thinking, and I think everybody in that session, actually, none of them were environmental students, none were science students. So I think it was an introduction to understanding different elements at a different level, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That is really one of the advantages is that it is so interdisciplinary. So that's why you can really use it. You can adapt it. It can be, use the full deck of cards. It can be a full scientific explanation. And if you spend time going into each card and explaining it, like the radiative forcing card, you can spend time on that. Or you can just, as you were saying, Sonia, get a better general knowledge of the science that most of us do not have. Even though we know, CO2 is coming from fossil fuels, but we only know that. So to get a little bit more background, if you use less cards and you spend less time explaining in detail the graphs, then you can still get that result, which is, yeah. And I think it's really, you're really talking about the objective behind the whole workshop is to come to a common agreement on the science and to make it digestible, to make that science digestible to everyone, not just students or scientists in environmental science. So that's a good point too. to bring up. Before we close, Nicole and maybe Steve and Laura, have you heard of sustainability efforts at your institutions that are under threat these days? Because I've heard of cuts at other institutions. They're more like colleges, but are you feeling that pressure? No, not at you too.
Not at all at U of T. U of T has kind of made it a core brand. And I don't see anything changing that at the moment. So U of T is ranked. There's somebody produces a world rankings. We are the number one in the world for sustainability,
Yeah,
and
QS sustainability.
and the university is very proud of that. And I think I can't see any of our leadership walking back on that, given that we've attained that status.
Okay.
We've got a new university president just starting who's also a strong advocate of sustainability. So I can't see anything changing at the university in that respect.
Are you going to be welcoming American professors?
Watch this space.
Aha, that's a scoop. Okay,
Nice.
okay.
Same with York, I think. I mean, I'm an office of one with our students, so only one full-time employee. Mike departed in early December, I guess.
Yeah.
We're not replacing Mike at this point, but York, like many other post-secondary, is facing major financial deficits. I think we're at the top of the list. So there's certainly lots of budget cuts. We've had voluntary exits. There's all sorts of things happening. I'm hoping that sustainability, I think as Steve indicated, is one of our key priorities at York as well. We haven't done as well in the QS sustainability, so we're not number one, but certainly it's one of our areas of pride, and I think it's the right thing to do. So I'm hopeful that there won't be any cuts. Having said that, there's also a forward action plan happening at York to revisit all of our faculties actually, and what is the future of the institution. So thinking about, are there better ways of looking at our faculties, looking at faculties of the future. So that is happening as we speak. I think it'll be some times before we see, that come to fruition, but we may see some changes where faculties may amalgamate, change, things like that in the future as well.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Because what I was just a bit surprised at is that even if you don't want to like stress sustainability, we're going towards a future where young people need to be trained on new kind of jobs or adapting jobs in all areas, right? For to be, because we're going to be electrifying a lot of things. So even just from a like training education standpoint, you can not call it sustainability, just call it future-proofing your students.
Yeah.
I was just surprised to hear that.
Well, Steve has a new minor in climate change studies
Oh,
out.
yeah.
A new major in climate change studies coming in the fall. Actually, I guess they're both opening in the fall.
Yep.
So we even have climate in the label on some of these new programs.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, great.
I'm also thinking, I was just going to say, I'm part of the Ontario College University Sustainability Professionals. I'm wondering if there's opportunity. I know we've had conversation. I know Victoria, there's interest there. I'm wondering if we could think about whether we do a session for that group.
Yeah.
I think that might be better than trying to do just a presentation about Climate Fresk. I'm thinking, could we do a virtual
run a session? Yeah, that'd be cool.
It would be virtual because, we've got people from, Thunder Bay to all over the place. But if we could figure out maybe a virtual session, I don't know if that's there.
I can, of course, as you know, we do have a virtual version of the workshop. You know, I'm not crazy about it, but you know, we should chat more maybe after,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
to see maybe if it's just a sneak preview, because I don't think we would go for 3 hours, you know, for
Yeah.
this session,
Yeah.
maybe 1
Yeah.
hour.
Yeah.
And they would just get the idea of the placing of the cards and the cause and consequence and the big picture.
Yeah. We do lunch and learns, like monthly lunch and learns, which are
Yeah.
usually about an hour. That could be a great
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah, that would probably be the best way to go for sure.
Yeah, it's a bit
And-
more of a commitment though to do a full fresk with them, because
Yeah.
it's again back to the time. You need them you need them for a lot more than an hour really to get their teeth into it. By the way, I'm likely to be running a fresk activity for Trinity College sometime early in the summer. Trinity has this big sustainability initiative. They've got a donor gave them money a few years ago for what they call an integrated sustainability initiative. And they've just
Wow.
gone through a strategic planning exercise and realized in the process that the staff at Trinity generally have no idea what sustainability is. And so they've got this very shallow idea. Oh yeah, it's about doing a better job on recycling and things like that. And a lot of the faculty who've been challenged to integrate sustainability into their courses more, even kind of the courses that are not on climate sustainability, but kind of weaving it in,
general, yeah.
also don't know. So we realized, you know what, maybe running a fresk activity with that group would really get them thinking more deeply. Anyway, so we just brainstormed that earlier this week. So might be doing that
That's
early
great.
summer, I think.
I agree that we do need to reach out to just staff at institutions, I know, educators, but also just staff in general, to make sure that they understand the need to integrate climate change in all of the teaching, including engineering. I'm in touch with an organization called Engineers of Tomorrow, because we have a few volunteer facilitators who are part of that organization, and having training on climate change in engineering school is also a big, need today, to get engineers to sort of integrate climate change, sustainability in the way they function. And I don't know how much that's the case, but anyway, Steve, I'll let me know, if you need any outside facilitators.
Yeah,
any
sure.
Facilitators, let us know. We can work out the logistics and all that. And otherwise, I have to let you go. Thank you very much. Laura, I don't know if you have some more time to chat, or if you want to convene another time. We can do that another time, just to keep brainstorming. Let me know.
Yeah, I've got to run now, but happy to chat another time.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Bye, everyone.
All
Thank
right. Bye.
you.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.